Jonathan Westwood, and I'm Chief of Staff at Liberis, based in London. So Liberis is an embedded finance provider. So what that means is through our API-powered platform, acquirers, marketplaces, software providers, they can quickly embed finance products within their ecosystems. So the idea being that gives their small business customers access to finance products through the platforms that they use most often. I think an interesting one recently, during this past lockdown, I sort of spent a bit of time learning about carpentry. So I'm currently obsessed with carpentry.
Okay.
I'm working on my own desk at the moment, which is, it's been a challenge, but a good lockdown project. Yeah, it's a good question. So before sort of the chief of staff role, I've been working in sort of investment analysis type roles, and that was across M&A and venture capital. For me, it always felt a bit sort of disingenuous speaking to founders, specifically when I was in the venture capital role, having not actually been in-house at a startup or Scaleup. So I was really looking to gain sort of in-house experience at the startup Scaleup. And Blenheim Chalcot, who are Liberis' majority shareholder, run a program called the Pioneer Program. And that's geared exactly towards that sort of profile of person. So people who have gained experience, perhaps it's consulting, perhaps it's finance, whatever it might be, but want to move into the world of sort of building businesses. So I applied to that program, and through that program, I was placed in Liberis in the chief of staff role. So for me, sort of the main motivation was getting that sort of operational experience in a startup. Yeah, I think it's a bit of a cliche, but it really depends where we are in the quarter, what's going on. But the way I sort of think about my job is by dividing it up. I sort of think I have a few core responsibilities. So that is sort of to the CEO, to the executive team. And these are sort of the things that I can't drop the ball on. So, maybe that's the CEO's got a BD meeting coming up, make sure the materials are ready for that. Maybe it's organising like the weekly executive team meeting, preparing for board meetings, things like that are sort of the core responsibilities. From there on up, it's really sort of what is your spare capacity above those core tasks. So it might be things like working through our internal communication strategies. How do we talk to the business? What are we telling everyone? And then on top of that, it's really sort of where your personal background and development ambitions, I think, come into the role. So my background is sort of finance and investment. So that's where lots of my time is spent in the chief of staff role. So I think on a day-to-day basis, it could be entirely focused on one of those things, or it could be juggling items from all three. I had to think about this one. I think for me, really the core skill that will get you through this role well is all to do with communication. Ultimately, you're in this role to help sort of support stakeholders across a variety of areas, whether it's the CEO, whether it's the exec team, it could be whoever. So you've really got to be good at building relationships sort of across the business. I think a good example of that is sort of classic task is maybe you're preparing like papers for a board meeting where the board want to dive into the sales funnel. I can definitely help think through the agenda and the questions we want to answer. So, how's the funnel performing? What are the causes of dropout? But ultimately, I need to work with the head of sales who's got that in-depth knowledge to answer those questions properly. So I think to really be successful in the role, communication is the most important piece. Yeah, it's a good question. For me, I think one of the things you've got to get used to as the chief of staff is I very much view it, and it was sort of sold to me as a stepping stone role. So you maybe do it for 2 years, maybe 3 years, and that will progress you into a position in the business. Maybe that's in a strategy team, maybe it's in a finance team, maybe it's a product team. But what you've got to be sort of comfortable with is at this point in time, you're a chief of staff, and that comes with a lot of sort of admin responsibilities. It's a lot of organizational items that perhaps isn't where you want to end up going, but to really be a good chief of staff, you've got to absolutely nail those pieces. So I think lots of people think the role's going to be, your 100% of your time is spent shaping the business's strategy or thinking through exciting problems, launching new products. But actually, the core bit of the role is being a really good sort of stakeholder manager internally. Yeah, I think it actually comes back to this last point, which is I think you've got to be comfortable that you're in a transitory stage in your career. And you've really got to commit to that fact, though. You've got to be happy that you're not going to be spending 100% of your time doing perhaps where you want to end up in a few years. But to really sort of excel in the role, you've got to be really good at those core responsibilities. So I sort of say you've really got to be comfortable with that aspect of the role.